Let's move on to the next bit here. We at Portage Bay used Webhooks with Claris Connect to address a shortcoming that we were seeing in our project management software Teamwork. So Kate was going to show what we did there. So turning it over to Kate.
I'm Kate Waldhauser, and I'm lead developer at Portage Bay Solutions, and I live outside of Austin, Texas. Yeah, I've been using FileMaker since initially version 4, and but developing professionally for the last 15 years. But I am new to Claris, well, newer to Claris. Claris Connect is new, right? So I've been using it since last year, but I really, yeah, it's just been such a fun tool to get involved with, and the possibilities of just, you know, really starting to open up. So this is a flow that I created to solve a, you know, a real world problem. I'm gonna share my screen here in 1 second. Okay, so we, yeah, we use Teamwork for our project management software. It's a web application. It works really great. It looks like this, and we can, you know, have all of our projects, tasks, files, everything assigned here. But one thing that it didn't do was these, the number here, see in the brackets, it's got a code and a 4-digit number, which is basically our task ID. And so when you add a new task, and I can't really demo it, but I think an ongoing, you know, it would just enter it normally. And we needed to make it have these ID numbers because it worked better for our business process. So I went ahead and started researching webhooks and Claris Connect as a possible solution to this problem, and found that I was able to make it work. So the first step was to research what the possible webhook options were with Teamwork. And to get that, I go into settings here, and if I click add webhook, it shows me again, like what Ronnie showed going into MailChimp. So I've got, this is the UI for Teamwork. I've got so many different webhooks. So as soon as any of these events fire, I can trigger a Claris Connect flow. So I'm using 2 different webhooks, the task created and task moved, since I wanted to add the ID to a newly created task, or if a task was moved to a different project, I wanted it to be renumbered with the ID for that project. And the other piece I have in here is Teamwork has custom fields. So I needed a place to put in, you know, I wanted this, this prefix that was going to be unique to each project. So I've got it as test for my sample project here. And it's in brackets here. Now they have custom fields in Teamwork, but we are not on the tier that includes custom fields. So what I did is just in the description field in brackets, I wrote the 4-digit or the code of the project code, how I wanted it to be numbered. So that's the basic problem that we had. I went to the webhook, looked at and saw that it had the webhooks I needed, and also, well, I'll get to this later, but I needed to address and understand some of the webhook documentation for Teamwork also to make this happen. So my next step was going into Claris Connect and creating the webhook. And I know Ronnie showed this already, but yeah, just the 2 ways to create a webhook, either directly from here or clicking on the webhook screen and adding it that way. And for this one, I do have a sync response turned on. And the reason why, you know, I know Ronnie talked about this as well, but and this goes back to kind of what Teamwork is expecting. So Teamwork, they are going to send a webhook once sorry, they're going to send it once an hour for a maximum of 3 attempts. And when they know that it's received, you know, they need a status code of 200 to be returned. So any other error, you know, any other codes returned, they're going to think it failed and we have to run it again. And I think of this, yeah, as the other component, and an analogy I use of understanding webhooks and the call and the response is similar to the one that Ronnie said, but, you know, it's like, yeah, if I'm, you know, looking, you know, I really like running shoes. And if I want a pair of a specific model of running shoes, I want the store to call me when they get them in stock, but then they have to know that I picked up the phone. Otherwise, they're just going to keep calling and calling and calling. So there has to be something that lets the webhook source application, which in this case is Teamwork. Teamwork needs to know that I actually, you know, that Claris Connect received the call. So this is an important piece to understanding, you know, and running the flow and running it with JSON, or replying, sorry, the reply with JSON. And I'll look at that in a second too. So after I generate the webhook, I copy that URL. I come back, I add my new webhook, and I just paste the URL right in here. You know, I'm not doing the authentication or the more advanced authorization in this one. I've just got it, yeah, open public right now. And then I run, and in this case, all I need to do to trigger the flow is to go ahead and add a new task. So attend meetup. That's going to trigger the task, and we'll see there, it ran. So now we'll see how all that happened. In my flow, I've got a little bit of logic going on. The first thing, I'm using an if. I'm using regular expression, which is really cool, something we don't have native in FileMaker. So Claris Connect gave me the opportunity to start learning a little bit more about regular expression. So what this is telling me is if the project description field returns anything within these within brackets, and this is another thing, you know, there you can have subtasks, and I didn't want the subtasks to get numbers. So it's telling me that this does not have a parent ID, it doesn't have or it's not a subtask therefore. And if that's the case, then I'm connecting to a FileMaker utility file, which is really simple. I'll show you the utility file that I built. And I can also talk about, you know, why I'm not doing everything in Claris Connect, but basically I needed a database in order to track the IDs. I wanted something that was going to accumulate and give me what the next ID number would be. So this is just a very simple database. I'm using calculated fields here to pull out the project code, the project ID, and then here's the new so this is an old one. You know, that was the old name. Here's the new name. I don't know if this is a good example of one. We can look at the one I just added. Yeah, here. So that was the old name. It determined the next ID was 30. So then it was going to rename it as attend meetup with that ID. And then I'm using a HTTP put request. So here's where I'm now going to use the Teamwork API, and I want to update that task that I just got from my webhook call. So I'm updating it. So for this, I'm using the Teamwork API. This is my call, and I'm setting the content of which is the name of the task, to my new calculated task name. And then I'm doing at the end, this is where reply with JSON, and here is where I can choose my status code. So I always want to return 200. And let's see. So that's about it to the flow. And like you just saw, it works pretty seamlessly. A couple of things to look out for: you cannot rename webhooks. I discovered. So I just created this initial one when I started working with it, teamwork, webhook. And yeah, I'd have to delete it and recreate it, which wasn't a huge problem. I know where it's used, but if I wanted to go edit that, it's a little bit more difficult. Yeah, the sync response, I guess I meant here, if you're not using a sync response, it can cause delays. And I think that's one thing I noticed. Because I tested it both ways. If I use reply with JSON or if I turn it off, what happens? And I noticed it takes a little longer. And sometimes if my flow fails or returns an error, well, this one doesn't have the problem in it anymore. But if I added another step in here that return, like if I add a stop, what's it called? Stop, this returns, I can't remember the status code of that. But if I have this running, then it would cause my flow or my webhook to receive an error, and it would just keep calling. Like I said, it calls once 3 times in a row, or once every hour. And the other thing I noticed, I don't have any error capture going on, but this is really something that I should have, because let's say my FileMaker file, my host, it's off, it's offline. Well, then this request is going to come in, and then when it hits and it needs to be renamed, and at step 3, it's going to have an error. Well, in this case, I wouldn't want to reply with status 200, because I would want it to perhaps keep calling, or I could also have some other action. Maybe I want it to send me a Slack message at that point and saying, hey, your FileMaker database is offline, your teamwork flow is not going to run, you need to get that fixed. So there's always, I think as we start using this, I think about error capture naturally with FileMaker, but with Claris Connect, I think there's definitely more opportunity and area where I need to start thinking about what are the potential errors and how to capture for those. And I can show you in another flow, I won't do it right now, but in another flow, I was thinking of trying to do more, push more of the work into Claris Connect, but I was encountering some errors and using error capture for that. And so, yeah, and then I think it's just the expected response, knowing that in order for the webhook to complete from teamwork side, I have to reply with 200 or just expect it to time out. And yeah, that's basically it for this flow. But it's really cool to be able to use Claris Connect and solve a real problem. Yeah, I really enjoy it.